Hello, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the Sacred Masculinity Podcast. Today, I want to talk about how to set better boundaries with yourself and with other people. I want to talk about the concept of thank you, but no. So, I was reading a book the other night on men's work, and it was a book where the author was making the point that a lot of women today, if you ask them out for like a dinner, for example. What? This is kind of a little strange. Okay. All right. So, Taylor with the Sacred Masculinity Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about thank you, but no, and learning how to honor your own boundaries. So, anyway, I was reading this book about men's work, and the author made a really interesting point. He was saying that, for a lot of women today, they've become very independent. And one of the things that can be really important as a test is if a man asks them on a date and they say, thank you, but no. That, like, okay, yeah, you want to ask me on a date, but I don't want to go on a date with you. And how at one time women might not have felt like they could have that independence, but now they do. And then part of it boils down to how do men handle that? How do men respond if they say thank you, but no, to the date? And it was, and then he went on to talk about how, what men need to realize now is that, women have been traumatized. There's been a lot of, um, by what men have done. And I agree with that. I think there is a lot of trauma there. Certainly, I think people in general are traumatized, but I will agree with him on that. And I think that no matter what kind of man you are, how healthy you are, like how present you are, all that other stuff, you can still end up ultimately representing that man for a woman. The man who may have abused her physically or mentally or sexually or other ways. And that may not be your intent, but nonetheless, that could be a projection, and it could also just be a reality. So he said, it's really important for men to recognize and honor the thank you, but no. And I thought, yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point. It made me think a lot, when have I been that man, whether I meant to be or not? I mean, and I don't think I've ever meant to be that man, but when have I been that man anyway? And I didn't realize it. So I was thinking about this, and then I was thinking, but this is also a skill that men maybe need to learn too. What I've noticed with a lot of men, and I include myself in this, is that we'll say yes to something. And we'll say yes because we kind of been conditioned that if you say no, you'll end up getting rejected. Or, you won't get whatever it is you hope to get from the experience with the woman. So, but if you say yes, then maybe you will. And I think really the people in general have been conditioned towards saying yes. I recognize that from a patriarchal perspective, men have been in a power in a system where systemically they've been put in a position of power, and they've had a lot more say. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. And nowadays, what men are discovering is they don't have that same level of power, and they're really having to learn some new skills. And I think that's really important too. Like we need to be present with how we show up in the world. One of the missions of my work is that I want to help men heal, so that in healing them, they don't perpetuate the violence toward other people that they may have that otherwise might occur, and so that they can also show up better and help in the healing of the world. Well, to do that, we have to be honest with ourselves that, at the same time, we have to learn how to set boundaries within ourselves. We have to learn how to say thank you, but no as well. So I don't think that this is a skill that it's a skill that we all have to learn. And we have to learn how to also be present with the thank you, but no. That if someone says thank you, but no, I'm not interested, or no, that I'm not going to do that, that we can be graceful about it and hold presence and space in a way that is healthy and healing and positive and good, and not put ourselves into a situation where we're reacting like uh, like a little boy throwing a tantrum. Well, you're not giving me this, so I'm gonna do, I'm gonna respond this way, or so these are important things to really sit with and consider. And so when I think about it, this concept of thank you but no, I think that like one of the key things that I've been starting to really do is well, how do I need to apply that to my own self and life, both in terms of gracefully receiving a rejection. And speaking as someone who has put himself out there sometimes and asked somebody out on a date and gotten rejected, you know what? I'm used to that. I'm okay with that. I mean, that's perfectly okay. Like, hey, like we aren't a good fit. That's kind of the way I look at it. It's kind of similar to the way I approach business. Like if someone unsubscribes from my newsletter, I don't get hurt or upset about it. I'm like, okay, that person and I aren't a good fit. They were never going to be a customer. Well, it's the same thing like with dating. Like, okay, if that person says no, like really they're doing me and themselves a favor. Because like otherwise it would just be awkward and uncomfortable and not a good fit. And I don't want that. I want to have good fits. But I also think it's important outside of the context of that to look in our own lives and say, when am I agreeing to something that where I'm putting myself out in a way that's not healthy for me? When do I say to somebody else, thank you, but no? Because sometimes that's what we need to do. We need to say, thank you, but no. Thank you for your interest, but no. Thank you for caring about me, but no. Or thank you for whatever. And I think back to my own experience that I was with somebody who sometimes wanted to have sex more frequently than I did, and a lot of times I would go along with it. Most of the time, in fact, I'd go along with it because, well, I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. But if I had said to her, "Thank you, but no," I would have been honoring my boundaries. Now, I'll grant you, it would have ended up resulting in some conflict. In fact, it did result in conflict on occasion. And sometimes I would give in because that's what I felt like I had to do to keep the peace. But I think that when we focus on keeping the peace instead of being honest with ourselves and with the other person in our lives, we do ourselves a disservice and we do that other person a disservice. It doesn't mean the conversations are always easy. And I say this as someone who still is guilty of keeping the peace sometimes. Like sometimes I won't speak to what's going on within me. Sometimes I won't say, this is what I need or want. Not that you're obligated to fulfill it or anything, but I won't speak up for myself, and that's something that like first of all, we have to recognize that just because you have a want or need doesn't mean that the other person is obligated to fulfill it. I mean, ideally, people want to connect and satisfy and be happy with each other in all the different ways that we can be. But if somebody doesn't, it doesn't matter what the context is. It's it's like you're forcing yourself on them then at that point in some way or shape or form. And so I think it's really important to recognize like sometimes we have to listen to ourselves and say, well, thank you, but no. Like thank you for wanting X, Y, and Z, but no, this isn't a good fit for me right now. And when it comes to this kind of honoring of it, it's something which can really help us to also determine that sometimes like, okay, thank you, but no really is a signal to you, like be able to say, you know what, I received that and I'm going to move on. Like maybe we can be friends, or maybe we can do other things, but I'm going to move on. I'm not going to continue to, hold my breath here, because I can't make, if X, Y, and Z isn't going to happen, then that's okay. I can be okay with that, and I can move on. And sometime, and again, I mean, it's a context by context driven situation. Like we have to make we make our choices in a way that makes sense to us and is going to be healthy for us. I think the most important thing is that you make healthy, informed choices, because it's so easy to make a choice from a place where you're disempowering yourself. And that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to disempower yourself. You want to be healthy with yourself. You want to care about yourself. You want to show up in a good way in the world. That can't happen when you're putting yourself into a situation where you're not honoring yourself. But here's the thing too, thank you but no also kind of applies toward where you say, okay, maybe I need to change some things. Maybe I need to take a step back from a situation and recognize, like, okay, this doesn't work for me right now. And I can honor where this person is, and I can also honor myself. I can say thank you but no to that person. And thank you but no to me means, like, really, like, I acknowledge and appreciate whatever it is. And I also acknowledge and appreciate that within me, there's this internal boundary that says this isn't a good fit for me. And so to that other person, my hope is that they'll receive that and that they'll accept it and move on, do whatever they need to do to take care of themselves, but accept that, at least, for the moment, it's a thank you but no, and it may be a thank you but no permanently, depending. And if it is a thank you but no permanently, it might just be a good idea to move on, to accept that's the reality, and not continue to try and beat your head against a brick wall. And when it's a thank you but no for, for like context, I mean, it can be okay to say, well, like, can we have a timeline here? Can we figure out what steps need to be put into place in order to help us move forward in a meaningful way? These are all also things that are important. So, it boils down to self-respect. When I respect myself, I am willing to set my own boundaries and take care of myself. I'm also willing to accept other people's boundaries, because I think a form of self-respect is like, well, do I really want this? Do I really want to show up in this person's life in this way that's not healthy? Probably not. It's not a good feeling. Do I want to show up in my life for other people and do so in a manner that is healthy? Well, yeah, that's important to me. So I look at thank you but no, and I'm like, well, thank you but no means let's honor who we are and how we show up in the world. Let's honor each other. Let's honor ourselves. Let's love ourselves enough to do the work we need to do to take care of ourselves and to really hold space in the world. And these are all key points to consider. So look in your own life and ask yourself where you might need to say thank you but no. And then start setting your boundaries and honoring them with yourself. Like, you need to honor your boundaries within yourself. And you need to do it in a way where it's not, going to feel like it's where you're not necessarily punishing someone else either, but you're not disempowering yourself and accepting something that isn't a good fit for you. Thank you but no, as a principle, is really, it's a principle of, I love and respect myself enough to say this is a good fit for me, and this is where it's not, and I'm going to stick with it, or I'm going to make a change. And that's what I would really recommend to anyone. that is, in a situation where it's like, let's take a really good, hard, critical look at ourselves and make healthy choices that are informed and aware. That's really what we want to look at. All right, that's it for today. I leave you with that gym, and if you need help applying that, I invite you to check out some of the links below this video. Make sure you subscribe, and remember that at the end of the day, like, all of us, men, women, and other identified people, we get to choose our boundaries. We get to set ourselves up for success, and by honoring ourselves, we ultimately do honor the relationships that we're in, especially when the other person reciprocates.